Has this ever happened to you? Right after an intimate moment with a man, the deep connection you felt suddenly seems to vanish into a cold, almost painful silence. A moment that seemed full of tenderness and promise, filled with glances that spoke volumes, turns into an inexplicable distance. This invisible emptiness arises precisely when you thought everything had been sealed by a unique and powerful bond. Your heart races, your mind fills with doubt, and a quiet fear echoes in your chest. It's as if, in those magical seconds that felt like an eternity, something within him disappears. And you're left trying to understand what just happened, what changed, why the warmth turned into cold without warning. In the midst of that silence, questions arise that gnaw at you from the inside. Was I enough? Did he truly want me? Is he rejecting me? Am I no longer the woman who attracted him just moments ago? I want to guide you beyond this confusion, because there is a truth few ever tell you, a raw, real, and transformative truth that can forever change how you experience intimacy, how you see yourself, and most importantly, how you create a connection that not only withstands the test of time, but becomes an unbreakable magnetic force between you and this man. This truth will not only help you understand what he feels and thinks in those seconds that seem like an abyss, but will also reveal to you your immense power as a woman. The ability to transform this seemingly empty space into fertile ground where the deepest and most sacred bond between two people can grow. This is not just about biological explanations or cliches about male behavior. We're entering a realm that few women truly understand, the invisible play of energies, emotions, and inner shadows that unfold in exactly this moment, and how your attitude, your presence, and your energy can turn that void into a bridge to a spiritual connection, to true devotion, and to a love that reaches far deeper than any surface. And if you're ready to leave confusion and fear behind, to reclaim your feminine core in every intimate moment, then stay with me, because what you'll discover today won't just help you understand him better, but will shape you into a woman no man could ever replace. Let me tell you the story of Laura, a 45-year-old woman who had gone through a painful divorce. After a long process of healing, she was ready to open her heart again. On that journey, she met Diego, a 47-year-old man who seemed to promise a new beginning. For weeks, their messages were a weave of hope and desire. Their glances were a quiet fire that made Laura believe in love again. Everything pointed to this encounter being sacred. A new chance, not just for a relationship, but for her own self-worth. Then came the long-awaited night when their bodies finally met. For Laura, every touch felt like a deep prayer, every kiss a silent promise, a wordless language sealing genuine and vulnerable surrender. She felt alive, fulfilled, connected in a way she hadn't in a very long time. But just when everything seemed to reach its peak, when she believed the connection was unbreakable, Diego suddenly turned away, stared at the ceiling, and fell into complete silence, as if he had suddenly disappeared. A cold shiver ran through Laura. A dark wave of doubt crashed over her. Was it just sex for him? Was I not enough to make him stay? Is he already pulling away, that inner voice that can shake even the strongest woman? This unexpected emptiness often hurts more than open rejection, because it's invisible, silent, and deceiving. What Laura didn't know in that moment, and what I want to tell you today, is this: that silence is not a sign of rejection or lack of love. On the contrary, it's an expression of a much deeper process unfolding within him, an instinctive, biological, and energetic process that few truly understand. Immediately after climax, the male body releases a hormone called prolactin. This substance causes a deep sense of physical exhaustion and a strong need to withdraw. It's as if his body is saying, "I need to recover," but it doesn't stop there. His mind also retreats, as if someone hit the reset button. For a brief time, his brain shuts down the areas responsible for emotional connection, and he slips into an internal state of stillness. This doesn't happen consciously. It's not a decision to ignore you or pull away. It's an automatic response, deeply rooted in his biology and in the way he processes the world. And on an energetic level, something equally powerful occurs. The masculine energy, which expands outward during intimacy, immediately draws back into its center afterward. It's an archetypal, natural process. After opening and surrendering, he must return to himself in order to regain his internal balance, like an overflowing river that must return to its riverbed. That's why this moment is not the end of a connection, but rather a natural part of the male cycle. When you understand this, it frees you from the weight of doubt and fear. You are not the reason for the silence. You are not less worthy. In that moment, his energy simply returns to its source. And what you do with that space determines whether your connection grows or falls apart. But here lies the key, one that few women know, and one that can completely transform this vulnerable moment. This emptiness, this silence that feels like an abyss, is not what defines the moment. What truly determines the direction of a connection is how you choose to respond to this invisible space. Imagine for a moment that you're right in the middle of that silence, which feels like a scream, and your first impulse is to ask questions, express insecurities, to feel the urgent need to fill that void with words. Are you okay? Do you love me? Why are you silent? These are questions born out of fear, but in reality, they carry a deep vibration of pressure and lack. In that moment, your energy doesn't radiate trust or strength, but a palpable fear that his subconscious perceives as an invisible trap. And this is the reality. When feminine energy expresses neediness, the man, who is instinctively trying to find his inner balance, feels confined. He senses that his space is shrinking, that he is being held onto. His instinctive response is retreat, a defense mechanism to preserve his autonomy and equilibrium. It's as if the door of his silence closes, and every attempt to force it open only seals it tighter. But what would happen if you saw this silence not as a wall, but as a gate? A sacred gate full of mystery, power, and deep calm. If you learn to remain present with serenity, not falling into neediness or urgency, if you become a woman who doesn't try to fill the space with words, but fills it with her feminine, calm, and confident energy, then you become an invisible, magnetic sanctuary, a place that can't be seen with the eyes but felt by the soul, a feminine presence that radiates deep peace, a sense of safety that doesn't depend on his approval or his words, an energy that speaks without words, complete in itself, unshaken by uncertainty and able to wait without fear. And right there, in that inner state of calm, true alchemy occurs. Because no man will ever forget or replace the woman who offers him that sacred space after intimacy. A woman who doesn't react nervously to his silence, who doesn't chase him with her gaze, but remains steady, radiant, and connected to her own power. This conscious moment of waiting is not passivity. It is a subtle dance of energy that invites him to return of his own free will, not out of obligation. It is the magnet that draws not only his body, but also his soul, the frequency that calls his heart back to you again and again, as if he finds in you a home he never wants to leave. That's why the power lies within you, in the way you respond to that emptiness, to that silence that can be either danger or gift. Because you have the ability to transform a moment of apparent separation into the foundation of a deep, lasting, and authentic connection. And that is the difference between a relationship that breaks and one that deepens until it becomes unbreakable. Let me tell you the story of Patricia, a 51-year-old woman who lived what many would call a stable married life. With Hector, her husband of over 20 years, she had built a life that, from the outside, seemed perfect. 2 grown children, a beautiful home, mutual respect, and a routine that carried their relationship. But behind that facade of stability, Patricia carried a quiet but intense burden. a deep emotional disconnection that became especially noticeable after each intimate encounter with Hector. During those moments, Hector seemed fully present. His touch was strong, his gaze intense, his desire tangible. In those hours, Patricia felt desired, loved, and alive. But as soon as the passion faded, everything changed. He would turn to the side, close his eyes, and sink into a silence that stood like a cold wall between them. Sometimes he fell asleep immediately, as if he wanted to disappear from the shared space. And Patricia, lying in the darkness, felt her soul freeze in the face of that inexplicable void. This silence didn't just remove Hector physically. It made her lose something much deeper. The connection to the man she loved. At first, Patricia didn't understand what was happening. Painful thoughts overwhelmed her. He doesn't love me anymore. I was never enough. What did I do wrong? These questions became an internal storm that consumed her until life led her to therapy, which revealed to her a far deeper and liberating truth. Through that process, Patricia came to understand that this silence was not a sign of rejection or lack of love, but the visible expression of what Carl Jung described as the male shadow, an inner struggle between the vulnerability triggered by intimacy and the instinctive need to regain control and protect his center. After the act of surrender in lovemaking, Hector didn't know how to remain in that emotional and physical openness, and his ego responded by shutting down, retreating, in order to rediscover himself. What changed for Patricia was her understanding that this space should not be filled with questions, accusations, or desperate attempts to reconnect. Instead, she learned to remain centered, to cultivate inner peace, and to offer Hector a place of retreat, grounded in calm and acceptance. Rather than filling the silence with urgent words, she filled the space with her serenity, without fear, without neediness. And gradually, as if this new space of mutual respect and freedom had broken through an invisible barrier, Hector began approaching her again, of his own free will, not out of obligation or habit. His gestures of love became more genuine, freer, his presence warmer and more authentic. This love was not forced by circumstances, but consciously chosen and nurtured in shared silence, in deep respect for the inner rhythm of them both. This story shows us, behind the silence that sometimes hurts lies a process we can honor and transform. The space that seems to separate us can become the threshold of a deeper, more genuine connection, if we hold it with presence, trust, and self-love. And yet this is where the fatal mistake lies that many women, like Anna, make in those very moments after intimacy without realizing the damage they do to a bond so delicate and precious. Anna, 53 years old, married to Leonardo for nearly 3 decades, had shared a physical connection that seemed strong. Leonardo desired her, touched her tenderly, and seemed fully engaged during lovemaking. But right afterward, once the fire had died down, he turned away, fell silent, or got up without saying a word. For Anna, that silence felt like a dagger to the soul. In an attempt to salvage the moment, she tried to fill the emptiness with intense embraces, urgent touches, and questions born from her insecurity. "Are you okay? Did you love me? Did you feel me?" As if desperately seeking reassurance to calm her fear of being abandoned. But instead of building a bridge, this urgency had the opposite effect on Leonardo. It created a sense of pressure, of suffocation, as though he were trapped in a net he could neither control nor escape. What Anna, and many women, didn't know. This immediate need to fill the space with words and gestures doesn't draw Leonardo closer, but rather tears apart the invisible, delicate bond that was just beginning to form. Because behind a man's silence after intimacy lies a biological, psychological, and energetic process that must not be disrupted or rushed. Carl Jung expressed it with brutal clarity. After fully opening up, masculine energy must return to its center, It's an instinctive withdrawal, a return to self in order to regain balance and strength. To interrupt this process with emotional demands, urgent questions, or visible neediness is like severing the bond that was connecting you. This energetic bond is born from surrender, and it is strengthened by respecting the other's space. In that moment, the man feels his freedom slipping away, his energy being bound, and his survival instinct activates an internal barrier that distances him. Not because he doesn't love you, not because he's cold, but because his masculine nature needs that space to realign and to return freely, not out of pressure or guilt. This is the truth many relationships ignore, and many women pay for it with the pain of separation, the sting of rejection, or the endless struggle to keep alive a connection that slowly fades. But here's the good news: it doesn't have to be this way. If you understand this pattern and learn to remain in your power without entering that space with fear or lack, you become the woman who not only respects his silence, but transforms it into an invisible bridge of love and attraction. True power lies not in the words you speak or the hasty actions you take after the act, but in the deep stillness you radiate when everything seems quiet. In those crucial minutes, your breath becomes the key to anchoring your energy and transforming that silence into an invisible bridge that calls him back to you. Breathe deeply, not just with your body, but with your whole being. Feel the breath as it comes and goes, as this constant rhythm connects you to your center, to the place within you where your calmest and most powerful essence lives. A strength that demands nothing, seeks no control, but accepts, holds, and waits with trust. As you breathe, offer yourself a soft, almost invisible smile. A smile not for him, but for yourself. This smile doesn't merely express joy, it emits the vibration of a woman who knows she is whole, who doesn't need anyone to feel worthy, who radiates peace and self-assurance from her purest essence. This feminine energy, as subtle as it is irresistible, is an invisible magnet that touches his soul and awakens in him a genuine longing, the desire to return to that place of calm and mystery that only you can offer. And if you touch him in that moment, do it with the gentleness of a woman who seeks nothing, with the softness of someone who simply wants to convey peace. Lay your hand on his chest or arm, gently, without pressure, without expecting a response or reaction. That brief, non-demanding touch is a silent message. I'm here, in my power, without neediness, without urgency, at peace with you and with myself. This calm, contented vibration turns your energy into a sacred temple, a safe place his soul will long to return to again and again. Because what a man truly seeks beyond the physical is that deep feeling of peace and acceptance that only a woman can offer who stands firmly in her center. Remember, it's not about doing something to hold on to him, but about being. This magnetic presence that, in silence and calm, creates an invisible but powerful space, one that connects him to you more deeply than words or time ever could. Daniela didn't discover this from a book or a seminar, but in the sacred silence of an ordinary night. She had lived a long story with Hugo, her husband of 10 years. A story that looked like love on the surface but left invisible marks on her soul. The intimacy between them was passionate, full of desire, but always ended the same way. Hugo would turn away, close his eyes, and sink into a silence that felt like an abyss to Daniela. She often lay there staring at the ceiling, tears in her eyes and a knot in her chest that she couldn't explain. It wasn't physical pain, nor a lack of love, it was something else. It was the feeling of giving everything, yet not quite reaching his soul. Something broke right at the moment when she longed for connection the most. Until one day, at a workshop on feminine energy and conscious relationships, something inside her clicked. She understood. She didn't have to disturb the silence, she didn't have to fight the emptiness, she didn't have to beg with looks or words. She realized that her power lay in her vibration, and she decided to try something different. That evening, after an intimate encounter much like the others before, she felt Hugo beginning to withdraw into his inner world. But this time, she didn't hold on, didn't embrace him out of fear, didn't ask whether he had loved her. Instead, she gently turned inward, closed her eyes, brought her attention to her lower belly, felt her energy returning to her like a warm wave, and repeated silently, with a calm she had never felt before. I am enough. My energy is a gift. I choose to share it, not to beg for it. In that moment, something shifted within Daniela. She wasn't seeking anything. She was simply at peace with her surrender, rooted in her own worth. Her body demanded nothing. Her soul longed for nothing. She radiated a quiet stillness, like someone who had truly come home to herself. And then the unexpected happened. Minutes later, without a word, Hugo slowly turned toward her, drew closer from behind, wrapped his arms around her, and rested his forehead against her neck. His voice trembled as he whispered, "You are my peace, and I don't know why I've never told you that." That moment was no coincidence. It was the energetic response to a new vibration. Daniela hadn't said anything, hadn't asked, hadn't explained, hadn't cried. She had simply embodied her power. That power that arises when a woman realizes she doesn't have to do anything to be loved, she only has to be. Because sometimes it's not what you do that transforms a relationship, it's what you carry within when the other pulls away. Eventually, Juliana, after many years of marriage, discovered a truth that not only transformed her relationship, but her entire experience of womanhood. For years, she had believed that love was built through devotion, through physical presence, through giving everything. And she did give, her body, her passion, her tenderness, her honest touch. But after each intimate moment, when her husband Ramiro turned away and drifted into sleep, Juliana was left alone, with a feeling that hurt more than rejection, the feeling of never truly having reached his soul. As though her body was welcome, but her energy remained unseen. As if, despite all her giving, something was still missing that could make it eternal. Until one day, worn down by the repeated emptiness, she looked inward. And there she understood. The body can give pleasure, yes, it can tremble, ignite fire, but only conscious energy touches the soul. Only when a woman is deeply present with herself, when she doesn't lose herself in the pursuit of validation or the fear of being left, when her frequency is rooted in peace and certainty, only then does her intimacy become a spiritual act. Then it is not sex, not routine, not surrender with expectation. It is sacred presence, elevated vibration, a silence that says, I am here, without fear, without mask, without haste. I am temple, I am threshold, I am vessel. Juliana stopped seeing intimacy as an emotional transaction. She began to understand it as a ritual of divine connection, a moment where her soul and her partners could meet beyond the body, beyond desire, beyond time. And through that inner transformation, something shifted in Ramiro as well. One evening, as she met his gaze with calm and touched him without expectation, he looked at her, as if seeing her for the very first time. Deeply moved, he whispered, I don't know what happened tonight, but I felt like I wasn't just with you. I felt like I touched something greater, as if you were a place I've always longed to return to, and never knew how. Juliana needed no more words. She knew she had arrived. She was no longer just his wife, not just his lover. She had become his energetic home, the threshold to something no other bond could ever reach. Because when a woman elevates intimacy into a conscious act, her body is no longer a lure, it becomes a temple. And that temple, when it vibrates in self-love, becomes irreplaceable, not because of what it gives, but because of what it awakens in the other. That's why today I want to invite you to completely transform your view of intimacy. Because it's not your beauty that binds him to you. It's not your total surrender, not what you do in bed, nor the sweet words you whisper to him. All of that might touch his ego, feed his desire for a moment, but it's not what leaves a mark on his soul. What truly connects him to you on a level no other woman can reach is the vibrational quality of your energy. It's what your silence says. It's the peace your presence offers him after the fire has passed. It's the soft, powerful stillness you radiate when you don't crave affection, but remain grounded in your center, as a woman who honors herself. Because in those sacred seconds after intimacy, when he turns away in silence, when his energy retreats and his shadow seeks to regain control, you have two choices: to enter that space with fear, or to inhabit it with inner strength, to seek his reassurance, or to become his energetic refuge. And if you choose the latter, if you breathe deeply, offer yourself a quiet smile, gently touch your own arm, and remain calm, without expectation, without pressure, then something happens. His soul senses it. His subconscious registers it. And without knowing why, he begins to associate your energy with home, with peace, with divinity. That is the woman who becomes unforgettable, not because she holds on to him, but because she lifts him up. That's why I'm not just inviting you to understand intimacy, I'm inviting you to consecrate it, to make it a sacred space where you don't offer your body to receive love, but where you offer your presence to create soul connection. Because when a woman learns to love from serenity, from conscious energy, from her inner temple, she doesn't need to chase, prove, or demand anything. She simply is. And that is something no man will ever forget. Speak this sentence not just as words, but as a deep anchor mantra of your soul. Today I understand masculine silence and awaken to my true power. I don't need to chase anyone, because I am presence. I don't need to demand, because I am vibration. I am the woman whose soul he will remember forever, not because of what I give, but because of who I am. Carry these words into every cell of your body. Make them flesh, make them truth. Because from today on, you are no longer the woman who waits to be chosen. You are the one who chooses herself. The one who vibrates so powerfully in her feminine essence that no man could ever forget her, even if he tried. If this message touched your heart, if something within you has awakened, then share it with another woman who needs this truth. Leave a like, subscribe to this channel, and become part of this community of conscious souls ready to love on a higher level. And remember, true power lies not in what you do to hold someone, but in what you radiate when you no longer need to.